Hi, my name is Bob Harris. The reason I made this video is that I wanted to address a couple of statements Dr. John McAdams made in his news group, Adult Assassination JFK, regarding my analysis of the final shots. Dr. McAdams is a professor at Marquette University and holds a PhD in political science from Harvard. He's a well-known defender of the Warren Commission and has recently written a soon-to-be-released book on the assassination. John has always denied that there was a massive protrusion on the back of the president's head, which appeared after the terrible explosion at frame 313 had completely subsided. For many years, going back into the 1990s, he's argued that what we see in frame 337 is some kind of optical illusion, and that the protrusion does not exist in frames before and after 337. The reason I tend to focus on 337 is there's a full-page scan of that frame in Grodin's The Killing of a President, which was taken from the HSCA second-generation copy of the Zapruder film. It is by far the clearest copy of that frame, which is available to the public. But let's take a look at John's accusation that I presented a misleading image which depicted damage that was not present in other frames. Okay, let's see if we can figure out whether the protrusion in the back of the president's head was for real, or whether it was some kind of an optical illusion or a one-time fluke. To figure this out, let's start looking at the back of the president's head prior to the explosion at 313. Notice that it's almost flat as a board in frame 301, 304, and so on. In fact, what we'll do is keep a cutout from frame 312 up here in the left corner. That way we can compare it with later frames and see if this really was a protrusion. Notice that even by frame 317, after the explosion has completely receded, the back of the head is still flat. There is no protrusion back there. We then come to some very, very blurred frames, and probably that second headshot was fired somewhere in this range. By 321, notice that the president is turned towards his wife, and we don't get to see a full profile of him. However, we can see that the top of the head and the rear is sitting higher than the center of the head, which is because a large piece of skull has been blown out and flipped to the rear. And when it did that, it pulled out hair and scalp from the front of the head, which kind of folded back over. 323, we see the same thing. Notice that this is sits much higher than the center of the head, even though we don't see the protrusion because he's not in full profile. Once again, further confirmation that this is not normal, folks. If your head ever looks like that, you better rush to the doctor's office right away. Now we're starting to see the protrusion. It's huge. Frame 333 is a little easier to see because he's coming back around into profile. Obviously, again, we're seeing the protrusion. 334 is kind of blurry, but we can see the outline. 335 is one of the sharper frames. And 337 is the frame I usually refer to. Now, it's true that after frame 337, we're not going to see the protrusion again. But not because it's an optical illusion, or not because it's not there, but because the frames are horribly blurred, and then the president's going to fall to the left, where his head is pretty much out of our view. Unlike the Zapruder film, the frames following 313 in the Nix film were not nearly as badly blurred. And in fact, we can look at the frames, and what I've done here is put the equivalent Zapruder frame numbers on each one of these Nix film frames. If we look at this beginning at 313, we see the back of the president's head, as we saw it in the Zapruder film, was very flat. Until we get to about frame 319, and then we see the protrusion forming as that part of the head was blown out. Look at 321. Obviously we're seeing a large protrusion there, 322 and so on. So we can see not only that the protrusion was very real, but we can see exactly when it formed. In my next video, I'm going to discuss Dr. McAdams' claim that there were no startle reactions by the limo passengers following Zapruder frame 285. In saying that, he not only contradicts my analysis, but the conclusion of Dr. Louis Alvarez, one of the most brilliant scientists of the 20th century.